In this podcast episode, comedian and political commentator Jimmy Dore delves into a variety of pressing topics, including the implications of Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden, the Washington Post's refusal to endorse Kamala Harris, and the broader political landscape as the 2024 election approaches. Dore begins by discussing the significance of Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden, emphasizing the sheer size and enthusiasm of the crowd. He notes that the event was a clear demonstration of Trump's enduring popularity, suggesting that the energy in the room was palpable and indicative of a larger movement. Dore argues that the rally was not just a display of support for Trump, but also a reflection of the frustrations many Americans feel towards the political establishment, particularly the Democratic Party. He contrasts the excitement at the rally with the current state of the Democratic Party, which he believes has lost touch with its base. Dore points out that many traditional Democratic voters are disillusioned and feel abandoned by a party that has shifted its focus away from working-class issues. This discontent, he argues, is what makes Trump's rallies so compelling. They offer a sense of hope and a promise of change that many feel is lacking in the Democratic platform. Dore then shifts to the topic of the Washington Post's recent decision not to endorse Kamala Harris for the upcoming election. He highlights this as a significant moment, suggesting that it reflects a growing discontent within the Democratic establishment itself. Dore argues that the Post's refusal to back Harris indicates a recognition that she may not be the candidate who can unite the party or appeal to a broad base of voters. He elaborates on the implications of this decision, suggesting that it could signal a fracture within the Democratic Party. Dore believes that the party's leadership is increasingly out of touch with the concerns of everyday Americans, and the lack of endorsement from a major publication like the Washington Post underscores this disconnect. He posits that this could lead to a more significant challenge for Harris as she attempts to rally support in the lead-up to the election. As the conversation progresses, Dore critiques the current state of the Democratic Party, arguing that it has become a party of the elite rather than a party that represents the interests of the working class. He points to the party's focus on identity politics and its alignment with corporate interests as factors that have alienated many traditional voters. Dore asserts that the party's leadership has prioritized the concerns of wealthy donors over the needs of its constituents, leading to a loss of trust among the electorate. Dore also discusses the impact of this shift on voter turnout and engagement. He suggests that many people feel disillusioned and apathetic towards the political process, believing that their voices are not being heard. This disenchantment, he argues, is a direct result of the Democratic Party's failure to address the economic and social issues that matter most to its base. Dore emphasizes the need for a return to grassroots organizing and a focus on policies that genuinely benefit working-class Americans. Dore takes a moment to address the role of media in shaping public perception and political discourse. He argues that mainstream media outlets, including the Washington Post, have become complicit in perpetuating the narratives of the political establishment. Dore believes that this has led to a lack of accountability for politicians and a failure to critically examine the policies and actions of those in power. He highlights the importance of independent media voices in providing alternative perspectives and holding the establishment accountable. Dore suggests that the rise of platforms like his own, which prioritize honest and open discussions, is crucial for fostering a more informed electorate. He believes that as more people turn to independent media for information, the influence of traditional outlets will continue to wane. The discussion then turns to the COVID-19 pandemic and its lasting effects on society. Dore reflects on how the pandemic has exposed deep-seated issues within the healthcare system and the political establishment. He argues that the government's response to the pandemic has been marked by misinformation and a lack of transparency, leading to widespread confusion and distrust among the public. Dore also addresses the issue of vaccine mandates and the impact they have had on individual freedoms. He expresses concern over the government's attempts to control personal health decisions and the implications this has for civil liberties. Dore believes that the pandemic has highlighted the need for a more nuanced and compassionate approach to public health, one that respects individual autonomy while addressing the collective good. Dore discusses the rise of populism in American politics, particularly in relation to Trump's appeal. He argues that Trump's message resonates with many people who feel left behind by the political establishment. Dore suggests that this populist sentiment is not limited to one party, but is a response to the broader failures of the political system. He emphasizes the importance of recognizing the common interests that unite different groups of voters. Dore believes that by focusing on shared economic concerns and a desire for genuine representation, there is potential for a more inclusive and effective political movement. He encourages listeners to look beyond party lines and consider the broader implications of their voting choices. As the conversation continues, Dore speculates on the future of the Republican Party in light of Trump's influence. He suggests that Trump's brand of populism has the potential to reshape the party's identity and priorities. Dore believes that if Trump wins the election, it could signal a significant shift in the Republican Party's approach to issues like trade, immigration, and foreign policy. Dore also notes that Trump's ability to connect with working-class voters could lead to a re-examination of traditional Republican values. He argues that this could create opportunities for collaboration between different factions within the party and even across party lines. Dore expresses hope that this shift could lead to a more inclusive political landscape that prioritizes the needs of everyday Americans. Dore highlights the critical role of labor movements in advocating for workers' rights and pushing back against corporate interests. He argues that strong labor unions are essential for ensuring fair wages and working conditions. Dore believes that the resurgence of labor activism is a positive development that can help to counterbalance the influence of big money in politics. He points to recent strikes and organizing efforts as signs of a growing awareness among workers of their collective power. Dore emphasizes the need for solidarity among different labor groups and encourages listeners to support union efforts. He believes that by coming together, workers can challenge the status quo and demand meaningful change. The conversation shifts to the topic of censorship and its implications for free speech. Dore expresses concern over the increasing efforts to silence dissenting voices, particularly in the context of the pandemic and political discourse. He argues that censorship undermines the principles of democracy and stifles important conversations about critical issues. Dore emphasizes the need for open dialogue and the importance of allowing diverse perspectives to be heard. He believes that when people are silenced, it creates an environment of fear and mistrust. Dore encourages listeners to stand up against censorship and advocate for the protection of free speech, regardless of their political beliefs. Dore discusses the influence of big tech companies on public discourse and political engagement. He argues that these companies have a responsibility to ensure that their platforms promote free expression and do not become tools for censorship. Dore expresses concern over the power that tech giants wield in shaping narratives and controlling information. He highlights the need for greater accountability and transparency from these companies. Dore believes that as more people become aware of the ways in which big tech can manipulate information, there will be increased pressure for reform. He encourages listeners to critically examine the role of technology in their lives and advocate for a more equitable digital landscape. As the podcast nears its conclusion, Dore reflects on the future of American democracy. He expresses concern over the growing polarization and division within society. Dore argues that if the political establishment continues to ignore the needs and concerns of everyday Americans, it could lead to further disillusionment and disengagement from the democratic process. He emphasizes the importance of grassroots organizing and community engagement in revitalizing democracy. Dore believes that by fostering connections among diverse groups and encouraging active participation, there is potential for a more vibrant and inclusive political landscape. He urges listeners to take an active role in shaping the future of their communities and the country as a whole. Dore concludes the podcast by calling for greater accountability among politicians and media figures. He argues that those in power must be held responsible for their actions and decisions. Dore believes that transparency and honesty are essential for rebuilding trust in the political system. He encourages listeners to demand accountability from their elected officials and to support independent media that prioritizes truth and integrity. Dore emphasizes that a healthy democracy relies on informed citizens who are willing to question authority and advocate for change. He expresses hope that by working together, individuals can create a more just and equitable society for all.